Hi, my name is Nate, and this is the Parent Guide Podcast. This is an outlet where I interview parents on a wide range of topics and in the context of all different age groups. On today's podcast, we're going to discuss being a stay-at-home dad with our guest, Chuck. He's a father of two, and we're also just going to talk about wherever else this conversation goes. So, Chuck, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks a lot.
So, Chuck, you have two kids. Tell us a little bit about your two kids.
Yep, I have two teenage girls now. Actually, no, one is 19 and one is 21. So we've gone out of the terrible teens for one. They are very different, although they're very close together in age, which has been its own challenge of if their clothes are the same size or not, or because we've had virtual battles in the house over somebody's clothes and if it's theirs or the others, and then, hopefully we don't come to fisticuffs. So,
And they're very close in age. Is it a benefit and is it a pro and a con? Is it?
Yeah, it's a pro and a con in the sense the pro side of that is a lot of times they're going to the same activity when they were younger. Sometimes there's a crossover in friends when they're younger.
Sure.
When they get older, it's a little different. But there's the cons of that are it's very like you have to, as a parent, you want to treat them almost, and I say almost equally, depending on the situation.
Yeah.
Where that 2-year age difference, sometimes the older one gets a little more leeway than the younger one,
Right.
because you're at a point where, okay, think about a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. There is a little more information you'll give the 7-year-old, and then as we get older and older, one drives and one doesn't drive.
Right.
And then the next one drives, and then we move into the fights of, oh, I asked for the car. Oh, why does she get the car? And all of that. So then you're at the point of like, wow, if they were in a lot different age group, meaning let's say 5 to 7 years, I wouldn't be dealing with this issue. Plus the other one could have saved the clothes and do the hand-me-downs. But now it's like they're literally almost the same size. So, and other things that are, I think, that were difficult is definitely the first time I took them to a McDonald's by myself. And I swear after that, I was never going to a restaurant by myself with the kids when they were probably a year old and 3 years old. And I was afraid to leave the table to go get the thing and then come back to the table. And then stuff was everywhere. And I'm like, oh, man. First of all, I didn't think I was a good dad. And number two, I didn't think they were going to let us in the McDonald's anymore. So, that's just some of the different things. And I could see that falling into, and listen, boys can be totally different. So I'm no expert on how to raise boys that are the same age.
I think it's with I've heard it said before. I think it was by my mother-in-law who said it. It's like with girls, you're dealing with the emotional and like the conflict with one another if you have a bunch of sisters and you're like going through, the debating and all this stuff and all this drama. With boys, it's like you're just trying to keep them alive. Like you're just trying to like keep them from killing themselves.
I think I can definitely see that. I almost think it would have been easier if to have 3 girls, because then there would have been more of like a maybe an us versus in a them versus us as parents, and they could all sort of unite a little more together. I do find, it's just the personalities and everybody their personalities. Although there's a lot in common, there's definitely a branch off of what my younger daughter likes from what my older daughter likes. And again, where you run into what you think would be a positive, like, again, clothes fitting, the same thing. And I was like, if you guys could just use your powers for good, you could have the biggest wardrobe in this entire town. But now it's like that stays in that closet and that stays in that closet, and never the twain shall meet. So
yeah, I know that with my brother is only 2 years older than me. He's like 22 months older than me, and we're like basically the same size. And I know that we were like, it never became like super like conflicted, but we were like sharing clothes all the time. That was
Yeah,
And it didn't think it every once in a while it would become an issue, but it would just be like, hey, I was looking for that. Like, I can only imagine. But then I see like my wife, she tells these stories about when she was with her sister who's only a couple years younger than her, and like it's just like a constant like
oh, it's a
like
lot.
it's
And
just
I
like
was
this crazy battle.
I'm one of two boys in my family, and the lucky thing was that we were born a year and 18 days apart.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's really close. But
Wow.
I guess the good thing, I mean, he just was a lot bigger than I was. There was never an issue with clothes because he never fit into anything that I wore, and we were totally different, just in what we did and our friends and stuff like that, and it didn't seem to matter. Plus, I mean, I'll just be, I'm 55 years old, so it really was open the door, let me go, and if I come back for dinner, my parents have done their job, so. It was a totally different time then anyway, when you could just run out the door and
So
come back when you wanted.
You touched on this a little bit,
Yeah.
but do you think that because of the close age, like they are really close? Do you think that if they were 5 or 7 years apart, do you think they would not be as close, or do you think that they would still?
Just you know what? I mean, they're pretty close. It's like anything else. You go through the different stages of there were some years that were more trying than others.
Yeah.
The high school years, just in terms of they were doing mostly the same things, but there was slight competition. And I
Yeah.
think now when it's okay for that to happen, we're getting to a point now where we're 21 and 19 where it's just a better dynamic between the
Right.
two.
They're adults.
They're
basically,
adults, and
so, yeah.
things work out because even the relationship that I had with them, my wife was saying like, don't even talk to them while they're in high school. You'll talk to them when they're done with high school and when they're in their 20s and 30s, and you'll have a great relationship. And I'm like, okay, but I think it's gone through stages like month to month, but it's gotten better as they've gotten older.
Yeah.
So
I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I went through growing up. So I had 3 older brothers and 1 younger sister. My younger sister was just kind of like, for the first 10, 12 years of my life, like she wasn't even really like a part of like the sibling dynamic just because she
Yep.
was so much younger than all of us.
Yep.
But I went through like a phase of like being like really close with each one of my brothers. And now, I'm the youngest of the brothers and I'm 22. So it's like 22, 24, 27 and almost 30. So now we're all kind of adults. So we're all like equally, like you said, like there's less drama. I mean, just because we're just,
Right.
we're all adults.
Totally
the
get
dynamic
it.
is
Totally get it.
completely different, so, which is great. And my parents love it too. Cause my sister's almost an adult too. I mean, she's almost 18. She's 17 at the moment. So like,
Yep.
everyone's personalities are fully developed. It's just a completely different dynamic. So we also, one of the main things we wanted to talk about today, Chuck, is like you said for not a couple of years, a handful of years, you were the stay-at-home dad. You
Yep.
said you had to quit your job. So start telling me that story.
Sure.
Start from the beginning.
Yeah. Okay. Oh God. All right. Anyway, so it basically, I had a fair, like a very stable job. I had been with my company for 18 years, and I had just gotten my college degree later in life because my company paid for it. So I was on track to then, okay, I've got my college degree, I'm moving up in the company, but my wife was offered an extraordinary promotion at her work to become a vice president. So what we tried to do, because we did have a little extra money at the time, was to say, okay, let's get a nanny. And this was in 2006. And I mean, the internet was around. You could kind of look for nannies and
Right.
stuff like that. So one person suggested somebody. It was a young woman with a young child. And that just turned out to be a nightmare. And the reason that we got rid of her is because she left the 2 girls in the car at
my
age
gosh.
like 5 and 7 and her baby in the car. And we let her go the next day. My daughters didn't like her anyway.
Is this the story you said?
Well, I
this
got a
one's-
better one. The next nanny we did find through at that point the internet in 2006, and she was an older woman, like 65, 66, maybe older, because she always seemed like she was sick and they were taking out some part of her body on a weekly basis. So we hired her because we felt it would be more of like the grandmother scenario. I should have started by saying my wife's mother took care of our daughters for their whole beginning life. My older daughter from age 1 and my younger daughter from when she was born. And my younger daughter was best friends with her, just
Gotcha.
best friends. This was really hard when she left, but my father-in-law retired and they moved away to Kentucky. That was hard in itself.
Yeah.
But then we got a second nanny that was older, and she was just, I think she felt very like, this is how I'm doing things and this is how I want to do things. But and one of the stories that I told Nate before was that and it's a crazy story. She said her husband was in witness protection from the Russian mafia.
Oh my gosh.
And she had him and I guess it's either the FBI or the CIA bring him to our house, not her house, because she figured it would be safer there.
Oh my
Okay, we
word.
didn't even fire her after that because we were both so like into our careers of like, okay, we're moving forward. But she did exactly what the other nanny did. She took them to dance class, and then they always got pizza, but it was raining, and she put the girls in the car, says, I'm going back. I don't want to take you with me into the pizza place. And my my older daughter, who was 7 at the time, said, if you leave us in the car, you're going to get fired. And I came home from work, and the nanny came over to me and said, well, I just want you to know that I left him in the car. Dora said, if you leave me in the car, you're going to get fired. And I just stood there and nodded, and she went home. And, we just called her up and fired her. Because, number one, I don't want to make my daughter look like she doesn't know what she's talking about, because she did. Because we told her, if anybody leaves you in the car, they're fired. So we needed to do that. So then I came on as the stay-at-home dad, and personally, that was very difficult because I was in a company that had a huge cafeteria, a workout room, and I had worked really hard to get to the position I was at. And I went through a certain amount of depression because I was cut off from everything I had done. But with that, I still knew that it was better as a parent to be there than somebody else being there because of, there's 2 examples that happened within 3 months of each other. And I'm like, we cannot do this anymore.
No, yeah, like there's a pattern here.
There's a pattern,
there's
and I'm
something
like,
being-
okay, this has to be done.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of things go through your mind, blah, blah, blah. Should I give up this? But whatever. But it was the right decision. And, it's like, oh, a guy's taking care of the kids, blah, blah. Well, I had it all down. I even took it like this. If this is my quote unquote job, I am going to be the best at it as I can be. You know,
Good
I was
for
up
you.
at 5:30 in the morning making lunch for my wife. We would drive the kids to school. Then I'd drive my wife to the train station to go to work. And then I'd come home and, sometimes I could do cool things like go mountain biking during the day and stuff like that. But I made sure that they had as normal of a life as was before their grandmother left. With that being said, I'll say this. Their grandmother is like super grandma.
Yeah.
And a story I can tell is she used to be a kindergarten teacher, art teacher, and if they said draw a cat, she could draw a cat like a cartoon cat. So once she left, my daughter asked me to draw a cat, and I suck at drawing, and I drew a cat, and they both started crying because of how bad the cat was.
Oh no.
And I was like, okay,
The bar was set too high.
This is not good. And the other thing I found was, hey, I'm not their grandmother either, and I am not as big of a coddler as definitely the grandmother is.
Right,
But
sure.
I tried to do everything I could to. I knew it was a terrible transition for them also. You'd have to be selfish as a parent not to realize that.
Yeah.
So, I just got the hang of things. Again, I think the only issue that was really hard for me was not being in the game of work, because I had been working. It felt like,
Right.
my whole life from the time I was like 18 years old, I had a job. And all of a sudden at 42 years old, I'm not working anywhere. I can't say. And the hard part is like, hey, what do you do? Seems like a really easy question to answer. So at one point it was like I felt ashamed, like, oh, I'm a stay-at-home dad,
Yeah.
or I don't do any. I don't know what I do. I don't know what I am, kind of thing.
And it seems like that stigma is leaving, but it still is somewhat there.
It is.
It
I
still
think
is there.
there's you hear people say like, for a mom, and I'm just saying a mom, I'm not mom or dad going back, you say, well, there's a lot of organization that goes into keeping a family of 4 going. There really is a lot of organization that goes into it. And it's not just being alive, but, where we're living. So you're not just like, oh, here's your sandwich, and here's this, and here's that. The one thing I can say that I really do know is my daughters look back at it, and they really appreciate it, because I was the
Good.
dad that would pick up the friends and drive the friends somewhere, and they could always do something because I was there for them.
Yeah.
And I had to come to grips with certain things, which I did, and I'm really happy with the decision I made to do that. There's like I said, a million things that go on that you're like, oh man, where's the book that tells you how to deal with this, kind of thing.
Are there any stories or moments from being a stay-at-home dad that stick out to you that are just really special? And on top of that, are there any, because of those moments, do you think that you would have never had those moments if you were working a full-time job and not spending as much time with the kids?
Yeah. So one of the things that I was able to do was, when parents say they go to watch their kids do different activities, my younger daughter was a really incredible gymnast, really young, and she was looked at to join competitions. And what was great is really watching her do what she did. And it might not be a specific thing, but I went to all of the, when the school had something, I would go. My kids would know I was going to be there. And I think that's the one thing that I think might carry over too much. I was always there. So, just seeing, even when they go to high school, if they're given an award or something, I was probably at every award thing. Again, my 2 daughters were on swimming team. I was really able to go, watch them practice and watch the meets, really go, and they were very successful at that. So I don't know if there's the only thing that stands out in and it's just because it's a bad thing, I guess, is because my older daughter went to a friend's party at a gymnastics place or a trampoline place, jumped up and came down, and I heard her leg snap.
Ugh.
And then that was getting her to the hospital, having them put a cast on her, and then and my wife was actually away, on a trip away, and then having to deal with literally carrying her from room to room, because she was only I think 6 at the time when or 7 at the time when it happened. So I just think I'm more thankful for seeing all the little things, and being able to go outside and throw. I taught them how to play football, and they got to be good at it, and play baseball, and I was their coach for softball, on both things, and for soccer. So I was really able to participate in what they did, and I think. I remember the times, because there's times where I'll look at a trophy or some award they have, and I was like, oh man, I really remember that.
Yeah.
And I can see how some parents don't even get that opportunity to do that.
Right.
So,
And I think that's something that goes deeper than just which role the parent takes on in the family. It's more of like a lesson of, are your parents and, or your close ones, able to be there or make time to be there for like special moments. Because when you're a kid, like sports are like,
oh yeah,
everything, or gymnastics, or, chess,
absolutely.
or whatever
Whatever
it
it is,
is,
whatever it
it could
is.
be debate class or
Yep.
whatever it is, those things mean a lot to you.
Mhm.
And even just your parent being there, like coming up to you afterwards.
And I
just
don't want to
giving
make
you a
it like
hug,
my wife wasn't there. I'm
Right.
just
No,
saying
yeah.
like there was always a representative of the family
Sure.
at an event. And it's also good for the kids' teachers to see, that there's somebody there, and the coaches to see that there's somebody there. And, I say, like, you hear terrible stories of, whether it's kidnappings or just different things like that. I never really had to worry about that because I was always felt like I was right there, or well, I was right there, so not or
literally,
so
you were
like
right there.
so. Yeah, I think, and the other thing is, and I don't want to quote a study or anything that I don't know about, but they said when there is a parent at home, when the kids come home from school, they are, X amount likely to get in trouble or be arrested or start doing whatever bad things they can do. There's definitely a correlation I can see, because I've seen their friends who have had parents that are, either divorced, or you could see they're just not very into the parenting thing or have reasons not to be there. I could see the kids that came over to our house, how different it was.
Yeah.
I
just
for
saw
somebody
a
to be there.
I did see a recent study that said, because there is a stigma of like for overbearing parents, but there is a balance. It was like parents that have, structure and like kind of strict rules and like, curfews, and those students performed better in their education. Those students were less likely to be involved in, crime.
Right.
It was like, no, not the moral of that is not to take away, the moral of the story is not to take away that to be an overbearing parent and to be in every detail of their life. But the moral of the story is that like the less involved you are with your kids and the less, rules and the more lax you are. I mean, it's a direct correlation.
And I think, on addressing that, I found I was I was more of a lax parent for the little things, but the things like, you're going to be here, you're going to do that, and giving them the structure. Little stuff, if they, I don't know. I saw one kid that came over to our house that the parent never gave them candy. And he came to our house and we had like these sugar packets and he was just literally downing sugar packets. So here's a kid that's like strict. I mean, outside of the house, he's going crazy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
How is that healthy?
Like, how is that healthy? And
Yeah.
I'm like thinking to myself, like, all right. Yeah, you don't have to be so heavy on, and I'm not telling any parent out there how to run their house, but the little things like that, I'm just like, okay, am I going to worry about that? Hey, brush your teeth after eating that sugar. That's what I'm going to say, but
it's okay to have the cupcake. I am not an expert on parenting, so for the listeners out there,
neither am I.
You can take my information with a grain of salt whenever I'm talking. The parents who come on the podcast, they are the experts. But my take on it is, it's okay every once in a while for your toddler to have half a cupcake. It's okay, like it won't ruin their day.
That's right.
They're strong, like they'll get through it. The important things are the love and compassion and the rules and the lessons that you can teach them. Those are the important things, like Chuck just said. like you just said, like it's the little things you can be. I would agree with that. I
find like if you're going, and it's like, not that, don't get me wrong, there are certain times where I know as a parent I focused on certain things maybe from my childhood where I was like, why are you doing that? Kind of thing. And I probably in sports, because I played sports my whole life and played competitive sports, where it's kind of like, when you go out there, you got to be your best out there. And I'm like thinking, I'm talking to an 8-year-old here. Like, how effective is this of doing that? And I'm like, okay, check yourself at the door, Chuck, because it's really that did not help.
No. Yeah.
If anything, that
Yeah.
put more pressure on them and more likely that they would quit.
Yeah. 100%.
You want to be. I will say this, like in terms of like, oh, how do I handle a coach that's not treating my kid fair? Make sure they're not treating your kid fair before you just jump in, because the advice I'll give is between what your kid says and what either a teacher or a coach says, there's something in the middle.
Yeah.
I've literally dealt with this on more than one occasion where I'm like, if that coach did this, I'm going out there and and then it's like, all right, don't do that. Listen to what the coach said. And it's like, okay. Now that makes sense. That's something I didn't get out of a 9-year-old, let's say.
No, yeah.
So, as a parent, don't just go running at your coach like, oh, they're treating your kid bad, but be aware of the situation. I don't think there's anything wrong with going to talk to a coach or a teacher. You just never want to infringe on their stuff during a game and say, why did you do that? Or, hey, that there's no place for that in kids' sports. It puts so much pressure on kids that will make them want to quit.
100%, yeah. And being in sports can raise their success rate
it's
in a lot of
good
aspects in life.
Bad, and it's good, bad, and otherwise. But I do think that you're also looking at it as like their friends are there. You're hoping they're going to make friends there. And from what I've seen, as a parent who was a stay-at-home parent, I met most of the parents and people that I'd say call my friends from the activities that the kids did, because that's where I was.
Yeah.
So. There is, in that way, there is a positive. And, some people are more into like, oh, I'm going to join this club and that club and all that. And I was just like, I'll be there, but I'm not joining a bunch of clubs just to sit around and talk about being a parent or something like that,
Well, Chuck, I have really enjoyed hearing your story. I didn't know 99% of it. So I've known you for over 2 years, and I didn't know any of this. So this has been really
I got
awesome.
a million of them.
I know. I'm
stuff.
probably gonna have you back on, and we're just gonna be like more stories with Chuck.
Yep.
Episodes, 62.
Yep.
Okay, that's about all the time we have today. Thank you, Chuck, for joining me today and sharing your experiences. For our listeners, you can check out all kinds of parenting info and insights at our website, parent.guide. That is parent.guide. Stay tuned for our episodes coming soon. We post on a weekly basis on the website. Thanks for listening.